All right, welcome to a Friday Reads, where I talk about what I read, what I'm reading, what I hope to get to next. And some months, I just want to start all the things. And that's what's happened. I'm not even that far into many things. And also, one family left, and then another family showed up. And if that didn't make sense, it's because my brain is mush. But essentially, I had my in-laws in town for 10 days, and then my aunt and uncle for Venezuela have been in town for 10 days. And the gap between these two groups was 12 hours. Now, I'm not hosting my aunt and uncle, so there's at least that, but I've been busy. I've been very busy prepping for classes that are now in full swing and also, doing family things. So, a lot of things I want to read kind of required, focus time, and my brain is, the opposite of focus. So I'm just attempting things here and there. We'll see what happens. I am currently reading something that's working really well, and I have finished one thing that I was kind of shocked about. So we'll start with that. The thing that I finished are The Unexpected Stories by Octavia Butler. These are the Amazon released. I don't think were ever edited by Butler. I don't necessarily think she ever intended to release these. But because it was free to consume on Audible, I figured I'd give it a listen while I was doing some yard work earlier this week. And honestly, for me, it was kind of pleasant because I have also read an out-of-print work by Butler called Survivors. And the first novella in Unexpected Stories, and I guess I should move out of frame so I can put a picture in, because, that'll just help future me. But I read Survivor by Butler, which is in her Pattern Master series. I have a Should You Read, How to Read for that series if you are curious about it. But this is aliens meet humans on a different planet sort of story. And it was always very interesting to me. I could understand why she didn't want it in her discography. It just doesn't really fit in sort of with the rest of Butler's work. But the alien species she created I thought was kind of cool. And the first novella is basically following that alien species. So for me, having met that before, kind of getting to go back and see it in isolation without humans, kind of cool. And then the second one, I'm just going to call a short story. They said novellas, but there's no way I consider the second one a novella. It's a short story, maybe a novelette. And that one's also Pattern Master. So it seems like these were all Pattern Master notes, which makes sense because she was doing a lot with Pattern Master. She was jumping all over the place. And so I listened to that, and this one was, I think, also cool. I think time period-wise, I wanted to place it in the Mind of My Mind era of it. That's kind of where I placed that story. And there's this person who can find side children, because if you don't know, the Pattern Master series by Octavia Butler looks at humans who've been mutated or have naturally gained mutations to become, psychic. They can do telekinesis, telepath, stuff like that. And they all have different powers. And one of the powers is the ability to discover others. And this person basically left this big organization that was still full of prejudice to help find, I guess, specifically young black side children to form his own organization. It's the beginning of a rebellion. And that one was also kind of cool. So I don't think these are groundbreaking. I don't think you need to consume them. I do think they provide more insight to where she was as an author and what she was playing with. So I think if you're a fan of Butler, it's interesting to consume them just because it really does just, expand all the thoughts and places she was playing in, even if it's not necessarily edited or made to the standard you would compare to maybe other stories of hers. For me, since Robin Miles was narrating it, I was having a fine time. I didn't really notice a quality difference. But do keep in mind that these were not works okayed by the author herself. This just happened posthumously to make a buck, right? That's just how it worked. So then the thing that I have been reading the most of is Fledgling, which is my last Butler. And I was right. It is, I'm only 30% of the way in. So obviously there is always room for me to become more grossed out. Always, especially with a Butler. A thing with Butler's works for me is she just loves to purposefully make people uncomfortable. And she loves playing, especially Fledgling, Xenogenesis, and Clay's Arc all play with this idea of there are biological imperatives you can't ignore. And that doesn't necessarily make this thing okay. But we're now going to do this thought experiment where we have this biological thing, and that does warp with our idea of what is consent in this situation and how do we feel uncomfortable because of our societal norms. So in the case of Fledgling, the main character is perceived as a 10 to 11-year-old, even though she is actually, I think, 50 to 60 years old. But she is not human species. So There's that, just to start off with. And she's a vampire adjacent type species and is basically able through, like, the chemicals in her venom, get people to be in her thrall, is essentially the best way I can put it. And, like, that's the part that's uncomfortable for me. It's not the age gap. Now, someone did bring up in my comments, I'm not a big visual reader, and I actually find it's even harder for me to visualize Butler works because it's really bare bones writing style. I actually really like it. It makes it really easy to read, which is why it's like the easiest thing for me to read right now, because it's not very descriptive. We're just going. So your imagination has to bring a lot to the table, and I know a lot of people do have very visual imagination. So visualizing the physical intimacy scenes with the 11-year-old and I think he's 25-year-old, uncomfortable. But for me, it's more that 25-year-old has, like, no say on how he feels about this 11-year-old, and that's uncomfortable. And I would be just as uncomfortable if that 11-year-old was, like, 21 or something like that. It's like, that's where the consent is really weird. But what's funny is always the thing that I hear be brought up is the fact that how the age gap is visually uncomfortable for people. So I think that's interesting. Per usual, we're going to have this weird symbiotic, parasitic community situation between two different species, which she's played around with a lot in her short stories and Xenogenesis. So I'm just here along for the ride. She just obviously really loves the whole, like, what happens when two worlds collide. What are the pros? What are the cons? Where are the power imbalances? That's an idea she loves playing with. And I guess for this one, she wanted to play with vampires. And I know this is what she wrote instead of the third Parable book. Because in theory, Parable of the Talents was not supposed to be the last in that series, although I've talked about Butler's series a lot. That does feel like a resting point. You don't have to ever be worried about it. There's a cliffhanger. And I guess it was really hard for her to imagine and think of the third book, so this is what she did in the meantime before she passed away. So, yeah, I could see it being, comfortable ground she has tread before, I guess I would say. But like I said, I just need something that's easy to read. And, like, it's uncomfortable. But the actual sentence structure, easy for me to consume. Now, I try a chapter of a whole bunch of other stuff. Well, actually, one I haven't tried a chapter of. It's just that I've been consuming Fledgling in audio and physical, so I've paused this audiobook, but I'm liking this audiobook. And I started listening to this, and I've actually had it on hold for months and just been waiting for the right moment for me to consume it because of Leanna's Library. She did a whole video review on this nonfiction book, which is like Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies, and it's just a book about the research into who Shakespeare is and why it is so taboo to ask the question of who is William Shakespeare. And I just thought that would be a really fun nonfiction book, and I'm right, I'm enjoying it. I haven't read more than 2 or 3 chapters so far, but it's, it's a fun little, like, mystery thriller. It feels like a podcast. Like, if you want a nonfiction book that feels like a podcast, I say this would fit the bill. So I'm not very far. I don't really have a vested interest in who William Shakespeare is per se, other than, he is one of the big authors of our era. We do a lot of stuff with his works. We do a lot of stuff postulating about his life and how it affects his works. So yeah, I think it's just, interesting. And so I've been consuming that as like my nonfiction, and I'm sure I'll get back to it after Fledgling. Otherwise, I've really not gotten far in much of anything. I sort of started Sword Heart, but I think I've read 5 pages of it. It does start with one of my favorite premises, which is I think we're starting with a funeral. Why do I like that? Who knows? I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I'm pretty sure our main character is trying to figure out the social norms of the situation. She doesn't want to really be involved with it, I think. Like I said, I've read 5 pages. I want to read more of it. I haven't had a lot of sit-down time. And, that's just how it is. Similarly, I started The West Passage. I have read 2 or 3 chapters, and whoa boy, this writing style is third person limited. And not my favorite. Not my favorite. It's not bad, and I'm actually curious to keep going, but I might wait for the audiobook to be out to help me along. So because this is an arc, this doesn't come out till July. I'm pretty sure it's the first week of July or something like that, and I could easily use my Audible credit to get the audiobook because I did see it there. So it's at least one of the Tor books that's getting an audiobook. I will say I do like the art at the tops. I think there is fun humor and characterization in it. It's just because of the at a distance writing style, I feel like I'm having to work really hard for this, and my brain doesn't want to work right now. So not an ideal moment. And that was even more exemplified when I picked up The Will to Battle, which I do want to get back to. I think after Fledgling, this is my next big thing. And I'm somewhere at the end of chapter 3 of this, which most of that I read last month, so I've really only read a couple pages. But this is also maybe a little bit more involved, but I was really enjoying this because of the premise and the characters, and like we're on the cusp of battle, and it's just, but again, sit down reading time, who is she? Who is she? Like, if I wasn't filming this right now, I'd be prepping for class. Like, I don't have time to read. I want to read. It's also really humid outside. Like, thank goodness, central air again, because I can keep the house at a pretty good humidity level without even keeping the AC on all the time. Like, we had it on yesterday because it was, like, way warmer. And today I just didn't open any windows, so it's nice in here, even though I don't have AC on. And outside, it is disgustingly muggy and gross. So the idea of reading outside, no, abhorrent. Don't want that. And then if I'm inside, I feel like I have to work. So I need to get my head around that. But that's what I'm doing. I've been rewatching House of the Dragon season 1. Ryan had not seen it before, and he's been enjoying it, so it's been great. We just did the big time jump, which is very fun. I'm curious about people who maybe have read the book, because I'm never going to read House of the Dragon. This is never happening. Because I hear it reads like a history textbook. And I don't like House of the Dragon because of the history. I like it because of the family drama. Like, the drama. But I just have no idea how you could be Team Alicent. Like, I can understand sympathizing with parts of her. But for the most part, I just feel so much hypocrisy. And I hate her. And her children are menaces. Absolute menaces. But that's just me. That's just me. Because, like, I think HBO is trying to make a whole Team Black, Team Green, or something like that. And I'm just like, who's gonna be on their team? Nobody. Then again, I thought it made sense to be Team Jacob back in the day, and obviously there are so many Team Edward people out there. Just wild. So yeah, that's this quick, short update, because my brain's been doing stuff. I don't know, or not doing stuff. I've been reading a lot of human biology books. So if you want to know about how your body works, I am not a doctor. Well, I have a doctorate, but I'm not an MD, but I'm learning stuff, and it's quite fun. It's quite fun. All right, let me know what you're reading, doing, watching this weekend. I have no idea what I'm doing this weekend. I have no clue. Oh, we saw Furiosa too. I liked it. Not as much as Mad Max Fury Road. I feel like that's like a cop-out review. Of course you didn't like the prequel as much as the original, blah, blah, blah. But it was still very fun. It was very fun, and the nose prosthetic they put on Chris Hemsworth does a lot of work. Because, like, I recognize people by, like, this part of their face, and, like, I knew it was Chris Hemsworth, but I kept forgetting it was Chris Hemsworth. Like, it was very jarring to me. He did a great job. Like, the acting was fantastic. Very well done. Great cinematography, all that, you know, classic action scenes. I just found the first Mad Max Fury Road to be just so immersive. Like, there are very few times where I'm in a movie and my heart rate's up and down with the characters, and, like, that Mad Max Fury Road, the first time I saw it, I expected nothing, and I was floored. And this just felt more like your typical hero's journey, which is totally fine. That's just not what Mad Max Fury Road was. So yeah. Okay, if you want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a vampire emoji for Fledgling, since that's really the thing I have the most opinions on this week. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!